The gas lamps flickered to life as dusk settled over London, casting a golden glow on the cobblestone streets. Lady Charlotte Beaumont stood before the grand mirror in her chamber, the reflection gazing back at her a portrait of poise and grace. Yet, beneath the surface, her heart fluttered with anticipation for the evening's ball, an event that promised more than just the usual array of waltzes and whispered gossip. As the carriage rolled through the gates of the Ashford estate, Charlotte's thoughts were a whirlwind of silk gowns and stolen glances. Little did she know, Sir Thomas Ashford watched from the shadows of the grand staircase, his gaze lingering on the woman who had unwittingly captured his attention. Their meeting was a collision of worlds, a dance of destiny that neither could escape. Madame Elise Dubois, Parisian dressmaker extraordinaire, was a veritable whirlwind of activity as she descended upon the ballroom. With the deftness of a hummingbird, she adjusted the hemline of Charlotte's midnight blue gown, her practiced fingers working their magic. "Ah, Lady Charlotte, you look simply ravissant," she exclaimed, stepping back to admire her handiwork. Charlotte felt a blush creep up her neck as she turned to face the mirror. The gown, expertly crafted by Madame Elise herself, clung to her curves like a second skin, the midnight blue silk shimmering in the candlelight. Her dark hair was piled atop her head, adorned with a simple ivory ribbon that matched the lace at her wrists. She felt almost dizzy from the anticipation of seeing Sir Thomas again. The orchestra began to play, and with a flutter in her stomach, Charlotte descended the grand staircase. The ballroom was awash in color and sound, the dancers moving like a kaleidoscope of movement and emotion. She scanned the crowd, searching for the familiar face she had dreamt of seeing. And then, there he was. Sir Thomas Ashford, standing by the window, his profile illuminated by the flickering candlelight. He turned at the sound of her approach, his eyes meeting hers. In that moment, she felt as though the world had stopped spinning. Without a word, he offered his hand, and she took it, allowing him to lead her onto the dance floor. The waltz they shared was nothing short of magical. Their bodies moving in perfect harmony, their gazes locked in a dance all their own. The music seemed to fade away, leaving only the beat of their hearts and the soft rustle of their clothes. As they whirled around the room, Charlotte could feel the tension between them building, a palpable sense of longing and desire. As the dance came to an end, they parted, each uncertain of what to say next. "You look lovely tonight, Lady Charlotte," he managed to stammer, his voice little more than a whisper. She felt herself blushing again, her heart fluttering in her chest. "Thank you," she replied, her voice barely audible. "You look quite dashing yourself." The silence stretched between them, charged with an electric current that seemed to crackle in the air. It was then that Madame Elise Dubois appeared at Charlotte's side, her dress a swirl of emerald green that seemed to capture the eye of every gentleman in the room. "Ah, Lady Charlotte," she exclaimed, "I was beginning to wonder where you had gotten off to. You've been dancing with this same gentleman this entire time." Charlotte felt a pang of guilt, but she could not take her eyes off of Sir Thomas. "Madame Elise," Sir Thomas interjected, stepping forward, "what a delight it is to see you again. I trust your visit to London has been most enjoyable?" Charlotte watched as the two engaged in their own dance of words and gestures, each seeming to know just how to push the other's buttons. She couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy, despite herself. Finally, Madame Elise excused herself, claiming she had spotted an old friend across the room. As she departed, Charlotte found herself alone with Sir Thomas once more. The air between them felt thick with unspoken words and unrequited desires. She felt as though she were on the edge of something monumental, something that could change the course of her life forever. Slowly, he leaned in, his breath warm against her ear. "I must confess, Lady Charlotte," he murmured, his voice low and seductive, "I have been looking forward to this moment all evening." She felt her heart skip a beat as he drew her closer, their bodies pressed together. The world seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them, caught in a moment of passion and longing. As if from a great distance, she heard the sound of laughter and music, the rustle of silk and the clink of glasses. But it was as if they were living in a bubble, apart from everything and everyone else. Time seemed to stand still as they danced, their connection growing stronger with each passing second. Finally, the waltz came to an end, and they parted, breathless and flushed. "Thank you for the dance, Sir Thomas," Charlotte managed to say, her voice barely audible. "It was my pleasure, Lady Charlotte," he replied, his gaze never leaving hers. "I hope there will be many more such dances in our future." She couldn't help but smile at his words, her heart racing with anticipation. They spent the rest of the evening together, lost in conversation and dancing, their bodies moving in perfect harmony once more. As the night wore on, Charlotte found herself wishing that it could last forever. But she knew that soon, she would have to return home, back to her life at Rosings Park. She couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness at the thought of leaving this magical night and the man who had stolen her heart behind. Finally, the clock struck midnight, and the ball came to an end. Guests began to say their goodbyes, promising to see each other again soon. Charlotte lingered by Sir Thomas's side, not wanting to let go of this moment just yet. He took her hand in his grip firm and reassuring. "I must admit, Lady Charlotte," he said, his voice low and earnest, "I have been thinking about you since the moment I first set eyes on you. My heart has not been the same since then." Her breath caught in her throat as she searched his eyes for any sign of deceit. But there was none to be found. He continued, "I have loved you from afar for so long, and now that I have had the chance to spend this evening with you, I cannot imagine ever letting you go." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Charlotte felt her heart soar with joy and relief. She knew, in that moment, that she loved him too. And as she stood there, lost in his eyes, she knew that there was only one thing she could do. She leaned forward, closing the distance between them, and pressed her lips to his. As their lips met, a shiver ran down her spine, and she knew that she had found her home. Their kiss deepened, becoming more urgent and passionate with each passing second. It was as if the world outside of their bubble had ceased to exist, and all that mattered was the connection they shared. Charlotte could feel his hands in her hair, his touch sending waves of desire coursing through her body. She responded in kind, wrapping her arms around him, losing herself in the feel of his muscles against her skin. When at last they broke apart for air, their breaths coming in ragged gasps, Charlotte found herself unable to speak. Her heart felt as though it might burst from her chest. Sir Thomas, seeing the emotion in her eyes, leaned in close once more, his lips brushing against her ear. "You are everything to me, Lady Charlotte," he whispered. "My heart will forever belong to you." As the final guests took their leave, Charlotte and Sir Thomas remained together, lost in each other's company. They wandered through the opulent ballroom, their hands entwined, as if they were the only two people in the world. And for that night, perhaps they were. They spoke of their hopes and dreams, their fears and desires, their shared love for each other growing stronger with every word. Finally, the servants began to close down the ballroom, and it was time for them to say goodbye. But as Sir Thomas helped her into her cloak, he leaned in and kissed her once more, his lips soft and tender against hers. "I cannot wait to see you again, my love," he murmured against her mouth. "Until then, know that you are always in my thoughts, until I can make you mine forever." Charlotte smiled up at him, her heart full to bursting. "And mine," she whispered. "And mine." As he watched her walk away, Sir Thomas felt a sense of peace and contentment wash over him. He knew, without a doubt, that he had found his soulmate in Lady Charlotte. And though they would face obstacles and challenges along the way, their love would carry them through anything. For now, all that mattered was the present moment and the promise of a future together. The following morning, Charlotte awoke with a smile on her face, the memory of Sir Thomas's kiss still lingering on her lips. She dressed carefully, choosing a gown of soft blue silk that brought out the color of her eyes. Today, she would visit her aunt to inform her of her engagement. Though she knew her aunt would not be pleased, she was determined to follow her heart and build a life with Sir Thomas. The journey to her aunt's estate was arduous, but Charlotte barely noticed the passing scenery. Her thoughts were consumed by the conversation she would soon have with her aunt. As she was announced at the front door, her aunt's stern expression told her everything she needed to know. "Lady Charlotte," her aunt said, her voice cold and clipped. "I trust you have come here to discuss your behavior at the ball last evening." Charlotte swallowed nervously, her heart beginning to race. "I am here to speak to you about something more important, my lady," she said, meeting her aunt's gaze. "I have something I must share with you." Her aunt raised an eyebrow, waiting for Charlotte to continue. Taking a deep breath, Charlotte forced herself to speak the words that had been burning inside her for so long. "I am in love, aunt. And I am to be married." Her aunt's expression turned to one of shock and disbelief. "To whom?" she demanded. "To whom are you to be married?" Charlotte hesitated for a moment, gathering her courage. "To Sir Thomas," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I am to marry Sir Thomas." Her aunt's face turned pale, and for a moment, Charlotte thought she might faint. But then, to her surprise, her aunt let out a bitter laugh. "You cannot possibly mean to marry that buffoon," she exclaimed. "He has no title, no land, no fortune. He is nothing but a commoner." Charlotte's heart sank, but she refused to be deterred. "I do not care about his title or his wealth, aunt," she said. "I care only for his love and his heart." Her aunt glared at her, the anger in her eyes burning bright. "You are making a mistake, child," she hissed.
A grave mistake.
"You will live to regret this day." Charlotte nodded, unable to meet her aunt's gaze. She knew that the road ahead would not be easy, but she also knew that she would face it with Sir Thomas by her side. As Charlotte turned to leave, her aunt's words echoing in her ears, she felt a newfound determination welling up within her. No matter what obstacles they faced, she and Sir Thomas would find a way to make their love work. And in the end, it would be worth every struggle and every tear. The journey to Sir Thomas's estate was a somber one, Charlotte lost in thought the entire way. When she finally arrived, she found Sir Thomas pacing anxiously in the great hall. His eyes lit up when he saw her, and he hurried over, taking her hand in his. "Charlotte," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. "I was beginning to fear the worst." She shook her head, unable to meet his gaze. "My aunt, she does not approve." He sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair. "I suspected as much," he said, his voice heavy with resignation. "But it does not change how I feel. I will find a way to make things work, my lady. We will find a way." Together, they retreated to Sir Thomas's study, where they could speak in private. The weight of their situation hung over them like a dark cloud, but they clung to each other, finding solace in their love. "I will not give up on us, Charlotte," Sir Thomas vowed, taking her hand in his. "No matter what obstacles we face, I will always choose you. You are my heart, my soul, and my future. Nothing and no one can ever change that." Her heart swelled at his words, and she leaned in, pressing a kiss to his lips. "And I you, Thomas," she whispered. "I love you." As the days turned into weeks, they found themselves embroiled in a battle for their love. Sir Thomas worked tirelessly to find a way to prove his worth, while Charlotte did everything in her power to convince her aunt that their love was real and true. They wrote letters to each other every day, filled with words of love and promises of their future together. In these letters, they shared their deepest fears and dreams, and it was through these words that they found solace and strength. One day, as Charlotte was reading through one of Sir Thomas's letters, she came across a line that made her heart skip a beat. "I have found a way, my dearest Charlotte. A way to ensure that we can be together, no matter what obstacles stand in our path." Her hopes soared, and she hurried to share the news with her aunt. At first, her aunt was skeptical, but as Charlotte spoke of Sir Thomas's plan, her expression slowly began to change. She listened intently, her eyes narrowing as she considered the possibilities. Finally, she sighed heavily, her shoulders slumping. "Very well," she said, her voice heavy with resignation. "If you are absolutely certain that this is what you want, I will not stand in the way of your happiness. But remember, you are both young, and your lives are yet to unfold. Be certain that this is what you truly want. However, you must promise me one thing." Charlotte nodded eagerly, her heart pounding in anticipation. "You must promise me," her aunt continued, "that you will always be happy and that you will never, ever regret your decision." Charlotte swallowed hard, knowing that this was the most important promise she would ever make. "I promise," she said, her voice barely audible. "With all my heart, I promise." And with that, the weight of the world seemed to lift from her shoulders. Charlotte could not wait to inform Thomas. When he arrived at the estate the following day, she grabbed his hand and took him to her aunt. Her aunt looked at them solemnly, before nodding and walking away. They solemnly nodded back, and with that, her aunt gave them her blessing. As they left the room, hand in hand, they could feel a newfound sense of freedom and hope coursing through their veins. The world lay before them, filled with possibilities, and they knew that no matter what challenges they might face, they would face them together. The ceremony was a grand affair, with all of their friends and family in attendance. Sir Thomas and Charlotte exchanged vows amidst a shower of rose petals, their eyes never leaving each other's. As they became man and wife, they knew that they had defied all odds and had found their way to each other, proving that love truly can conquer all. In the years that followed, Sir Thomas and Charlotte built a life together. They traveled the world, experiencing new cultures and making countless memories. They started a family of their own, their children growing up to be as kind and loving as their parents. And though there were still obstacles to overcome, they faced them side by side, never once doubting their love for each other or the strength of their bond. As they sat by the fireplace on a crisp winter's evening, sipping wine and watching the flames dance, Sir Thomas turned to Charlotte and smiled. "My dearest wife," he said, taking her hand in his, "I am so grateful for this life we have built together. For every laugh, every tear, and every challenge we have faced." Charlotte looked into his eyes, her own welling with emotion. "And I," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper, "am so thankful for you. For your love, your strength, and your unwavering support. You have made my life complete." Their conversation meandered through the years, touching on the highs and lows they had shared. They spoke of their children, now grown and spreading their wings, and the pride they took in their accomplishments. They talked about their travels, the places they had seen and the people they had met, and how they had always found their way back to each other. Their hands entwined, and as they sat there, lost in each other's memories, they could feel the weight of time settling gently upon them. But it was not a burden. It was a testament to the love they shared, the lives they had built together, and the future that lay ahead. They knew that no matter what challenges might come, they would face them hand in hand, always. As the fire died down, they rose from their chairs, leaning on each other for support. Together, they retired to their bedroom, where they would soon lie down and drift off to sleep, secure in the knowledge that they had found their home, not just in a house, but in each other's hearts. And as they fell asleep, they were both certain of one thing: that no matter how many years passed, their love would only grow stronger with each passing moment. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. Give us a like if you want to see more, and drop a comment below to let us know your thoughts.